Have you or a Pauper player you know been hurt by sticker name Goblin? Is Basilisk Gate making your creatures feel too small to compete? Are Talarian terrors terrorizing your favorite top 8? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you may be entitled to compensation. Welcome back to another Salt and Pauper Saturday video, and today I bring you from the Pauper powerhouse himself, Hyzen01. I give you Ratfire, Garden Rat, Rat Bomb Garden. I'm not sure what we're calling this monstrosity, but by any name, it delivers. This deck is packed with card draw and value with some late game powerhouse bombs and enough Crypt Rats to make the scene from Wanted look tame. If you're looking for an anti-meta deck to take to the bank, this is the one for you, boasting an impressive testing record of 66 wins to 11 match losses over 85 matches. So let's take a look at this list and let's play some games. Alrighty, guys, welcome to the deck tech for this absolute beast of a deck that Hyzen01 has been piloting to great effect, piloted by several other people on MTGO and prominent figures, but this is the version that Hyzen recently posted and has been running through a 100 match test bracket with a ridiculous win rate of just about 78% match wins. We're going to start with the lands real quick, run through these. There's nothing super surprising, but there is a little bit of tech in here. We have double Bajuka Bog, which is pretty uncommon these days, and triple Golgari Rot Farm. Now, 3 bounce lands is a lot for the format right now and the speed at which the format is going. So that may surprise a lot of you. We have a single Haunted Mire. This is a typed swamp. It's for combination with our Troll of Khazad-dûn. And then we have 4 Colony Gardens. That is where the Gardens part of the deck gets its name. Single Sunlit Marsh. This is to enable the white splash for COP blue out of the sideboard against the Terror decks and Delver decks. We have 7 Swamps, just regular basic swamps. We have a single Witch's Cottage. This helps us be a little bit recursive. It gives us a little bit of inevitability when you mix it with those 3 bounce lands. You get several uses of this when you need it, and if you take a quick peek over the rest of this list, you'll notice just how few targets this land has. So it is worth it to be aware that there is only one. And then we have 2 Witherbloom Campuses, which is the black-green Scryland. And it does put in a little bit of work here, although the deck is very draw heavy. You see several hits on draw spells here. We're running 2 Campfires. Now, this is a card that many of you may have overlooked in Commander Masters downshifts. Same. But this is a card that says 1 mana tap, you gain 2 life. It's just recursive life gain on a 1 mana artifact. And then for 2 mana, you can tap and exile it. You put all commanders you own from the command zone and from your graveyard into your hand. Then you shuffle your graveyard into your library. So against things like Turbo Fog or some of those mill decks, you do have an instant speed way to reset your library, which is super handy. Although a little bit obscure in this metagame. Not sure many mill decks are out there at the moment. But with the rise of fog decks combating the mono red menace, Sticker Goblin, there may be some use cases for that, so keep an eye on them. Next up, we have a whole suite of kill spells. We've got 4 each of Cast Down and Chainer's Edicts, and then we have some draw. So we're going to have on 2, we're going to have 4 Deadly Disputes, 3 Reckoner's Bargains, and then we're also going to have 4 Ichor Wellsprings, 3 Lembas. Lots and lots of draw coming out of this deck. And then as a backup plan for that aggro deck, we are going to be running 2 Moments Peace in the deck. This just gives us a little bit more time and gives us a couple of things to utilize from the graveyard. We have things, like that Witch's Cottage and a couple flashback spells here. So gives us a little bit of extra time for 1-for-1 carding, which is kind of what this deck aims to do. Then we have our not 1-for-1 removal suite, which is 2 Drowning Sorrows, a single Suffocating Fumes, and 3 Crypt Rats. Now, Drowning Sorrows had a lot of people excited about this card when it was downshifted, but it hasn't seen much play since, and this really is a great shell to show off this card. It does a lot of work in this meta. Same with this single Suffocating Fumes. Back to some single target removal. Of course, we're playing black, we're playing swamps, we're going to have snuff outs. We're only running 3. With red being as popular as it is, it can't really afford to pay that much life, even though our top end is a Fangren Marauder, and we do have a lot of food and life gain. It's just a big cost, and we don't want to use too many of them, so we'd rather draw our other removal spells here. And then for our top end, we have 2 Troll of Khazad-dûn. Again, this enables the white splash for those COP blues. But it also acts as a 6-drop so that you can recur it with that Witch's Cottage and slam it down once you've stabilized the board, which is super relevant in matchups against pretty much anything that's not like mono red or the mirror. It's very, very common that you'll slam this down after a couple of board wipes, and the opponent will just have no gas left to contest it, and you'll run away with the game. And then we have Fangren Marauder. This is a very important card in the metagame right now. Every artifact put into your graveyard, you may gain 5 life. Or, sorry, any artifact put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you may gain 5 life. This card is an all-star right now. If this card hits the board, and you have any way to protect it, or even just get some extra utility out of it by sacrificing it to a Reckoner's Bargain or something if they try to kill it, you can really stack up a bunch of life very quickly. Speaking of life, sideboard comes out. We have 3 COP blues. This is against Delver and Terror. I mean, there's not much else. You don't have to target the Terror, so it gets around Ward, which is super nice, and they're very threat light, just like this deck. And really lack ways to deal with permanents, just spells. So if you can sneak this in on one of the early turns, they're really going to have a hard time getting it out unless they have like exactly Echoing Truth. And a lot of decks have cut those for snaps lately, so really difficult for them to deal with this, and it's going to cinch that matchup pretty quickly. We have 4 Duress. This is for pretty much anything you need it to be. It can also be against the blue decks, but in most cases, this is probably going to be most useful against combo decks, things like FAMs, that kind of stuff. And then we have 2 Distresses. Oh, the Duress can also be used against all that glitters. You can strip their draw spells and their all that glitters away. Very useful for that. Same with the Distress. Distress is quite good against most of those combo decks, and most of those decks that are going to refill from their hand very quickly. 2 extra Drowning Sorrows. This is just here for those wide board states if you need it, so that you can bring those in to up the board wipe potential, say in matchups where Snuff Out is dead. And then you have 4 Weather the Storms. This is, again, for those burn decks, but also for the combo decks, things like Cycle Storm or One Land Spy. Sometimes, depends on their run out, but sometimes you can out life gain their damage. So this is a great way to do that on a 2-mana card. Anyway, guys, that wraps up the deck tech. We're going to jump into some game replays real quick and show you what this deck can do, because it had a pretty impressive showing, even just right off rip, right as I began playing it. This deck showed incredible promise. It didn't take too long to kind of adjust to the playstyle of the deck. It really felt like the deck kind of piloted me. But we're going to take a look at some of the games, and I'll meet you guys in game 1. Alrighty, guys, this is game 1 against Deneb999. We won the die roll, so we are on the play. We're going to take the play, and let's see what this game has to offer for us. We get a very weird starting hand here. This is just 3 effective cantrips and 4 lands, but I decided to roll the dice and hope that we hit action. If the opponent was on exactly like mono red, we might be in trouble, but anything else, I feel like this hand is probably going to get enough time to find some action and We have a lot of 1-for-1 removal. Any kill spell that's instant speed is insurance against the goblin turn, so we really have a lot of options from this hand, and I like the card selection. Opponent does show us a mountain, which is terrifying, but we top deck a Snuff Out, so we are safe against the goblin. We're going to lead out with a Limboss. We decide to put back the Witch's Cottage, and we top deck a Campfire, which is great. Because as soon as we grab a Campfire, we see that the opponent is on Red, Black Burn or Madness Burn, and now we know Campfire is going to be an all-star. We are no longer at risk of dying in one turn on turn 3, so we can play pretty aggressively with this Campfire as backup. We're going to go ahead and tap out here. We're going to play this Wellspring. We're going to play this Campfire. Really artifact heavy draw, but we know the opponent isn't likely to have any artifact hate in the main. Opponent drops a Kitchen Imp here. Considered Snuff Outing here just to prevent any further damage that it was going to deal, but eventually decided that the gain 2 life from the Campfire is going to neutralize this Kitchen Imp anyway. So I'm not forced to take action right at this moment. And if after this next land drop or after the next couple of land drops, if I want to pay for the Snuff Out, I can. Otherwise, I'll top deck either a Chainers or a Cast Down and not have to worry about it. And I can keep the Snuff... Sorry, I can't Snuff Out the Kitchen Imp because it is a black creature. Ignore me. We top deck the Cast Down, though, so we're golden anyway. We're going to go ahead and play this Wellspring. We should probably just Cast Down right then to avoid any weird Deadly Dispute shenanigans from the opponent, but we elect to let the opponent play more spells. Not really sure what we're hoping the opponent will cast. Really just hoping that the opponent won't provide any additional pressure, and we may be able to just tap and use this Campfire instead of using the Cast Down. Opponent does just play it safe and attacks before casting anything, so we do pull the trigger with the Cast Down. They follow with a Scrapwork Muck into a Fiery Temper, which is a good hit for the opponent. But they're really not applying much pressure on us. We're going to run out this Crypt Rats and drop a land. Once again, we have Snuff Out open if we need it, and we're going to keep this Campfire active. This is just going to basically fog my opponent's creature. Opponent lets off the gas a bit here with a bounce land into a Faithless Looting and doesn't have any Madness spells. Plays an Epicure to ping me for 1, but ultimately we escape that turn pretty unscathed. We're going to keep this Reckoner's Bargain off this Limboss, which is great for us. It allows us to pop the Crypt Rats to ping off the board, and then also Reckoner's Bargain, which is great. Opponent is going to improvise Club in response, but we're still going to gain the 3 life back. And then we still have a Campfire activation at end of turn, so we gained no life off of that, but we lost no life off of that, which is where we want to be. Opponent just follows up with a Fodder Tosser. It's down to 2 cards in hand. We top deck a Fangrim Marauder, which is fantastic. We haven't seen any removal from the opponent, which makes me a little scared they might be holding something like a Chainers or a Cast Down. But we decided to let it rip on the Fangrim Marauder just because we're not going to be able to keep up a Deadly Dispute or anything next to it unless we top deck a land anyway. So we go ahead and let it rip with the Fangrim Marauder, and the idea is that if we live, we untap, we're able to sacrifice several Limboss and a Deadly Dispute for a treasure token, and we're really going to have probably 3, maybe even 4 triggers from this creature next turn, and then the opponent will have no shot closing this game out from 2 cards in hand. Opponent flashbacks the Faithless here. Once again, misses all the Madness triggers, so we are getting all the time in the world. We're going to go ahead and let it rip on this Fangrim Marauder, but the opponent scoops it up immediately, knowing that they don't have the resources to combat the life gain. And then we head to Game 2 against the Rakdos Burn opponent. Game 2 against the opponent. Deneb 999. Obviously, these Snuff Outs were not super helpful. Neither are the Chainer's Edicts going to be super helpful. They've got a lot of, like the Scrapwork Mutts and the Voldaren Epicures that are really just going to eat these. We elect to bring in all of our board wipes. and our Weather the Storms to combat the opponent. Really just feels like life gain is going to induce another scoop from the opponent here, so that's the way we're going to play it. And then we bring in the board wipes just to help clean up those boards as opposed to having Chainer's Edicts. We do still have a single Chainer's Edict in the deck, but that is the last one. We get a great hand to keep here. This has 3 lands with a bounce land, a Weather Storm, a Chainer's Edict, Deadly, and a Crypt Rats. I mean, this is kind of where you want to be. We would like to see an artifact to sacrifice for this Deadly Dispute, but at the end of the day, this is a great hand for safety. Probably going to turn to this Rot Farm, though, just to make sure we have Weather online in case the opponent goes for a really big, like, Faithless Looting turn. Other than that, though, we're in a pretty good spot. We lead with an untapped land. Probably should have left with the tap land here, but the idea was that we're going to bounce it with Rot Farm anyway, so it doesn't matter which land we play, and we're not likely to hit a 1-drop unless we hit a Campfire. We do not hit a Campfire, but opponent starts with a turn 1 Kitchen Imp, which is about the best start they can have, so we play our untapped land to hit them with the Chainer's Edict. Feels a little bit bad knowing that we're not going to be able to have this Weather the Storm on turn 3. However, they just burned their Faithless Looting, so we know we're not in danger of a huge Faithless Looting turn unless they played one and have a whole nother one loaded up and ready to go, which seems unlikely. So pull the trigger on the Chainers there and elect to go shields down for the Weather the Storm one more time. With the game plan that now we can just play the Ichor Wellspring next turn and then bounce the Swamp back. Opponent just playing a Scrapwork Mutt there, no real shock. We're going to go ahead and play the Wellspring, play the bounce land just like we drew it up. Opponent does have another Faithless for a Kitchen Imp. Not a huge turn though, no double spell. Just an attack for 4. Would have liked to have Weather the Storm open for that turn, but it's okay. We're just going to untap and pass here. We have the Deadly Dispute up for this Wellspring. And then we're going to Weather the Storm. Hoped the opponent would play some creatures there on the end step or on the main phase 2 after combat, but they didn't. They just sandbag it. We have a ton of cards to play on this turn, though, so we're going to go ahead and Bojuka Bog the opponent's graveyard, which is fantastic. We actually end up hitting double Faithless Looting and a Scrapwork Mutt there, which is huge for us. And then we're going to just cast down this Kitchen Imp. Should we have cast down the Kitchen Imp before we exiled everything? Yes. Is it likely to matter? No. And then we play the Lemboss, draw another Reckoner's Bargain. So we know we're in a pretty good spot. Unfortunate that the opponent has a Smash to Smithereens for my Lemboss there. Really would have liked to hold open a Reckoner's Bargain to whiff that 3 damage. Or, sorry. With that 3 damage from the Smash to Smithereens, but unfortunate there. Still have double Crypt Rat, double Reckoner's Bargain, sandbagged from the opponent though, so we have a lot of board wipes, a lot of draw spells left, and some life gain hiding in the wings. All in all, this game is going about as well as it can be against a Rakdos Burn. Feels pretty well in hand, and they're at 4 cards, we're at 7 cards. Definitely feeling like we have the edge here, and we're going to see if we can top deck some action to close out this game. It's not going to take much, I don't think. We're going to go ahead and rip this Crypt Rats. They bolt us, so in response, we're going to burn it. We missed the Reckoner's Bargain there. I misclicked through priority, and unfortunately don't get to sacrifice my rats with the trigger on the stack, which was my intention. So I should be at 10 life here, not 7 life. The intention for going in response to that bolt, by the way, was simply that if they play, a Blood Fountain or something along those lines, they have a lot of Galv Blast lines for lethal. Now, granted, I have not seen Deadly Dispute, nor have I seen Galvblast from this opponent in game 1 or 2, but in my locals, there is a diehard Rakdos Burn player who runs Galvblast, and I'm a little shell-shocked by it, so I just tend to play around it just in case, because I have seen some absolute insane lethals from that deck out of nowhere, and really just trying to play it safe here. So I wanted to be at 10, not at 7, but that's what we got. Hopefully we're not dead, and we'll be able to get this Reckoner's Bargain off here. We go to 4, which is terrifying. We are going to cast down the Scrapwork so we don't go to 2. We top deck a Colony Garden, which is good. It gives us a blocker. We are in the danger zone, though. 4 mana is dead to Galvblast, so we're going to run out this Crypt Rats, hold the Reckoner's Bargain. Opponent does go for the Bolt. Taps out of red mana, which is super important there. And then we go ahead and Reckoner's Bargain to combat the 3 damage from the Lightning Bolt. So we stay at 4. We draw 2 cards. We hit a Weather the Storm. This is actually massive for us. On the end step here, we are absolutely supposed to just let it rip with this Weather the Storm. We do not. Once again, unfortunately, I passed through priority a little bit too fast trying to save time. Because I feel like I'm going to lose this and will need the time for game number 3. So I passed through without getting the Weather the Storm off, which would have gained me 9 life and put me at 13, and I'm pretty sure that would have ended the game. But we top deck a Troll of Khazad-dûn, which is great for us here. We get to slam this Troll of Khazad-dûn with Reckoner's Bargain up to gain 6, which is where we want to be. Feels very, very good here. Just pass through with the Reckoner's Bargain or the Weather the Storm active. Feel pretty safe. Opponent just passes back, which is fantastic for us. We're going to attack with this Troll. Start applying the pressure now that we've turned the corner from the opponent. Opponent's going to Vampire's Kiss. We're just going to let it rip with the Reckoner's Bargain and plan to Witch's Cottage it if we need it. We've got double Moment's Peace in hand now, so we're really safe from combat damage. We just have to worry about burn. And I think with the Weather the Storm in hand, we feel pretty safe against the burn too. We're going to cast the 1 Moment's Peace just to inflate the storm count and then Weather for 12 life here. And opponent scoops it up. That is a clean 2-0 against Rakdos Burn for a very near creatureless green-black control deck. And wow, does this deck feel powerful. Match number 2 against Avaman or Avaman. We rin the die roll again, so we're going to keep it. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at what our hand is. Unfortunately, quick mulligan. No land hand there. Or 1 land hand there that we just can't keep. But this hand is very keepable. We have a Fangren Marauder. We have a Reckoner's Bargain. We're hoping to draw some mid-game action, some removal, some draw. But as long as we get an artifact or something we can sacrifice this Reckoner's Bargain, I feel like we'll be okay. We're going to throw back that Campus. May have been a little loose to throw back the Campus, but I wanted the blocker from Colony Garden and the untapped lands from the Swamp, and the Rot Farm serves as 2 land drops, so seemed like the worst land of the options. I probably could have put back 1 Swamp and kept the Witherbloom Campus on reflection. But we didn't elect for that here, and with double green available to us through this Colony Garden, it didn't feel like we needed the green. Maybe it should have been kept because it would let us scry if we do absolutely fizzle and hit nothing but more lands. This is a 21 land deck, so we do have to be aware that land top decks are going to happen. Lead off on the Colony Garden, though, no problems there. Opponent shows us a black gate and names white, which is really interesting. Maybe some form of Esper Squadron Hawk or some form of Esper Gates. Could just be white-black Gates. I've seen Pestilence decks running Gates to combat the Goblin Menace. So we will see what the opponent's on. Draw a Deadly Dispute here, which is fantastic. It allows us to Deadly Dispute this plant token. We're just going to play a land at Pass Through, with that being the plan. Opponent plays a Basilisk Gate into a Scrapwork Mutt. Now we're a little bit confused. Not sure what the opponent is on, some sort of Mardu Reanimator maybe, but unsure why they would need the gates for that. Opponent discards a Prismatic Strands. This is a bit of a hint. It is a graveyard-centric deck. But we're gonna follow through with the plan. We're just gonna Deadly Dispute and draw our cards. We hit a Chainers and a Cast Down, so we're gonna go ahead and Chainers the Scrapwork Mutt. Keep the Cast Down around just in case we need it. And then pass it through to the opponent. We're gonna hold this Cast Down up if we need it. We don't want to cast down a cat. That feels pretty bad. But we top deck a Bojuka Bog, so we actually go for a cast down play here to hit the cat, the Sacred Cat, and then we're going to Bojuka Bog all three, which is pretty wild. Value, value, value. Unfortunately, opponent has a Benevolent Blessing, which is an absolute blowout in this case, but cards you're not likely to see very many places. Mono White Heroic plays it sometimes. Mono White Infect if you like playing non-meta brews, but absolutely blows us out here. Unfortunate from the opponent. But that being said, we have a lot of play here because opponent is only on 2 gates, so they don't have us on a huge clock or anything like that. We do still elect to Bojuka Bog the Prismatic Strands just to enable more top decks. Opponent elects to just attack here instead of pumping with the gate, which is really interesting. Not sure what they were afraid of. But they play a Breathless Knight in main phase 2. And now we know what we're playing against. This is some sort of Breathless Knight Reanimator brew. Absolutely love this card. I think this deck is probably good. I would expect to see recommissions and unearths and lots of things. So this Bojuka Bog here is going to be an absolute all-star. We definitely want to draw more bounce lands so that we can cast it more times. Not cast it. Play it more times. We just play a land and pass back to the opponent. Opponent doesn't have us on a huge clock here. They're still attacking for 6, which is a lot, but not a ton. We do have some time here. We top deck a Snuff Out, which is feeling real bad because it can't target either of their creatures. But we're going to continue to hit land drops here. The plan is just to get to this Fangrim Marauder and then set up a treasure token, Reckoner's Bargain if we need it. That feels like the way to stabilize the game, because it is a green creature and they can't use their protection spell against it. But then they play a Mire Triton, which is a fantastic addition to this deck, I might add. Oh, weird art bug. But it has Death Touch, which means that our Fangrim Marauder can't really deal with that card. Unfortunate. But we have lots of removal here. We have a Chainers in the graveyard, Chainers in the hand, and a Snuff Out, even though Snuff Out is still a dead card at the moment. We're going to play out this Fangrim Marauder. We've got the Sacrifice the Treasure into the Reckoner's Bargain if we need to buy a lot of time. Opponent's still not on double gate activation, so we do have a lot of time. Opponent just elects to swing for 7 here. We take the 7, no problem. We go to 3 with the knowledge that we have 11 life in the bank here. And this feels like a good time. We top deck another Bojuka Bog, which is fantastic. We're going to go ahead and try to clear out the opponent's board as much as possible, just to build up into this Bojuka Bog. So we go ahead and Chainers. They get rid of the Mire Triton. We hold the Bojuka Bog here. 7 mana to flashback a Chainers. We're going to gain 5 life. Opponent sacrifices the cat, which surprises me, because that was an unkillable creature for us, and now we can kill it if they make the token. But we are at 8 and they don't have lethal. Opponent refills very quickly, though, off of an unearth. If we could have played the Bojuka Bog, we probably should have, but opponent gives us a nice juicy board. We're really hoping to hit a Crypt Rats here, and then we're golden because we have this Bojuka Bog sandbagged to wipe the graveyard. Opponent hits us for just 3, nothing terrifying there. We still have this Reckoner's Bargain as safety. We hit a Moment's Peace, which gives us a lot of time. We do pull the trigger on the Bojuka Bog right away to hit a whole bunch of the opponent's stuff. They didn't have a ton that they could get back, but they did have a couple of things they could Reanimator if they're just sitting on a whole bunch of Reanimator spells. Opponent hasn't played that many creatures. They've just been bringing back the creatures as I kill them. So I take a read here that they're on non-creature spells in hand, and I want to dead as many of those as possible. So just pull the trigger on the Bojuka Bog here. It does make the Crypt Rats less good, obviously, but hopefully booming the board will give us enough time. We're just going to pass it back here on 5. We have a Moment's Peace, so we know we're safe. Opponent's going to split up the damage, which seems a little odd. They could have just presented lethal in the air, but we're going to Moment's Peace it. Opponent elects to sack a blood here, giving us 5 life out of it, which is great. We finally just pull the trigger and Reckoner's Bargain this plant token. It's not really doing much for us. We have a Moment's Peace in the graveyard to flashback now, so we know we're not going to chump block with it, so we just eat it with Reckoner's Bargain. It doesn't look like we're going to need to eat the Marauder for the life, and we hit a Crypt Rats, which is exactly what we want. We also have a Golgari Rot Farm to bounce one of the Bojuka Bogs, which is great for us, and a Cast Down. We just kind of have it all. We're going to go ahead and pull the trigger right away to boom for 3. Probably could have waited until their turn, but wanted to get this 5 damage in and start kind of stabilizing the game and really forcing a clock. Otherwise, they're going to get way too much life and we're never going to be able to catch up. Opponent has a recommission for the Breathless Knight and an Unearth for the Rafine's Informant. And then we're going to go ahead and see another Prismatic Strands going to the graveyard. Really nice to have the Bojuka Bog for that Prismatic Strands once again. We go ahead and cast down the Rafine's Informant. Big misplay there. Definitely should have snuff outed the Rafine's Informant and then have cast down for this Breathless Knight. But we have never punished. We have Chainers, so we're going to flashback this Chainers, then play the Bojuka Bog, wipe the opponent's graveyard yet again. Hit for another 5. So we should have a cast down in hand, not a snuff out in hand. But it doesn't matter. Opponent on 1 card just scoops it up with no targets for this Blood Fountain. They don't feel like playing it out and chunking for 5 over 5 turns. So clean victory there. A little bit dicey, low on life, but was able to pretty handedly control the situation and make sure that we were never at that big a risk. Deck felt great. Let's go to game number 2. All right, game number 2 against Avaman or Avaman. Our snuff outs weren't totally dead, but they were dead quite a bit. So we elect to put out 2 snuff outs and we bring in the double Drown in Sorrow just to fill out as many board wipes as possible. We don't bring anything else in. Discard seems like it's going to help our opponent more than hurt them. And we don't have anything we want to bring in more than having that lone snuff out. And if it helps, it helps. Opponent didn't show us a ton of non-black creatures, but we did see Scrapwork Moat, we saw Rafine's Informant, we saw Sacred Cat, so hopefully it's not as dead as it was last game. But we cut down to 1 of them, so shouldn't be that big a deal. We go ahead and get a questionable hand. Unsure if we have what it needs, but I do really like Campfire. I like Suffocating Fumes. I have a Moment's Peace to buy time, and then I have a Lembas and a Reckoner's Bargain. So the hand feels like it can get there, but it's a little bit slow. I make the decision to keep this hand based on last game and how slow the opponent came out of the gates. Hopefully they don't have a blistering fast start or anything weird like that, and we can just stabilize quickly. Opponent starts on another gate. Great for us there. We're just going to run out this campus with the goal of playing a Campfire next turn and then rot farming. Lunarch Veteran to start things off. Not too scary. We are indeed going to Campfire bounce land. just like we drew it up, we're just going to take the one here. Very little pressure from the opponent. Opponent Bojuka Bog's nothing, which is great for us because we do have a little bit of graveyard action and even a flashback spell in our hand. We're just going to play this Lembas in a tapped land, draw a card. We've got a Snuff Out. So now we have a Swamp for our Snuff Out, which is great. And then we have a Suffocating Fumes to follow it up. Opponent plays a Sacred Cat here. We have Suffocating Fumes in hand, which seems quite good. But we just play an untapped land and a Lembas, and we pass it back with a Cast Down up just in case they have like a Basilisk Gate or something to apply a bunch of pressure. Elect not to hit the Suffocating Fumes right there. With the goal of probably Cast Downing or Snuff Outing at end of turn. And then Suffocating Fumes and Bojuka Bogging away their creatures. We elect to instead just Moment's Peace and see if we can get the opponent to commit more to the board. Unfortunately, they don't commit more to the board, so we're just going to go ahead and Suffocating Fumes and then pull the trigger on the Bojuka Bog to get rid of this Lunarch Veteran right away. We have several kill spells in hand, so we're not hurting under pressure at all, and this is live to all of them, so fine there. We're going to take this 3. We do have a Reckoner's Bargain to gain some life, but opponent sets up a board very quickly against us, going Breathless Night into a full Sacred Cats. We're going to top deck a Colony Garden here, play the Colony Garden. We're going to cast down this Breathless Night. Wishing I had another Bojuka Bog. Maybe I should have held the Bojuka Bog. Maybe I should have held the Suffocating Fumes and just not pulled the trigger until they committed more to the board in the first place. Really difficult to tell if they would have. But we do have this Campfire online, so it's not like we're taking a ton. They're only facing 4 damage on us. No Basilisk Gate yet. And we're getting 2 each turn, so they're only doing 2 each. That's a lot of time. An opponent doesn't have something to bring back the Breathless Night quite yet. We go ahead and sacrifice the plant to the Reckoner's Bargain to draw some cards and hope to hit more draw so that we can hit a board wipe, because that's really what we're looking for. We want a Crypt Rots or a Drown in Sorrow here. Opponent does have Recommission to hit the Breathless Night, which is pretty brutal. But once again, all of our board wipes are live here, so we're going to go ahead and tap this Campfire, hoping to hit a Drown in Sorrow or a Crypt Rats, and then we can Chainers out that Breathless Night. Hit another Colony Garden, we play a draw spell, play a Colony Garden for a chump blocker, and pass the turn. We're still in a reasonable scenario. We have a lot of time here. They're not hitting for that much. We're going to go ahead and Snuff Out by paying the cost, not the life. We still have a Moment's Peace in the graveyard, so we do have some time. We're just going to take 4 here, or take 5 here, sorry. They have an Unearth for the Rafine's Informant immediately to put another Sacred Cat in the graveyard, which is a lot of value for the opponent, but we nail the Drown in Sorrow, which is exactly what we wanted. We get to Drowning Sorrow here. We see a Cast Down, and then we're going to Chainers away that Breathless Night. We keep the Cast Down on top. We still have 2 life coming from this Campfire, so they did slow down quite a bit. Opponent drops another Prismatic Strands in the graveyard, though, and is able to rebuy both of these Sacred Cats, so they've got a lot of pressure up if they hit a Basilisk Gate. But if they don't hit a Basilisk Gate, we're still only taking 3, so we have lots and lots of time here with this Campfire, putting in all kinds of work. We hit the Cast Down. We knew it was there. We're going to cast down the Rafine's Informant and just pass the turn back, knowing that Sacred Cats are even with this Campfire. Even if they gain some life, we're not losing any life. Unless they hit a Basilisk Gate, and then we have Moment's Peace in the graveyard if we need it. Opponent does not hit Basilisk Gate, just hits for 2. We're going to Fog effectively here. Opponent just plays another Breathless Night, which is fantastic for them. We're going to Lembas. We see a Fangren Marauder, which is great. We elect to not run this Fangren Marauder out yet. The reason is if you count up, we've only got 2, 4, 6, 7 lands. So we cannot play this out and sacrifice an artifact if they have a removal spell. So we elect to hold for this Golgari Rot Farm to be untapped and for us to play another land. That way when we play the Fangren Marauder, we have two separate instances of sacrificing Lembas in response and gaining, what is that, 10, 8, 16 life. So gives us a lot more time if they do, in fact, have the removal spell. We also haven't hit our Witch's Cottage yet, so any troll is a Witch's Cottage to get our Fangren back. Lots of options here, but I think we have the time, again, counting on the opponent not to hit a Basilisk Gate, but we do have the Moment's Peace in the grave if we need it, so that's why we don't play the Fangren Marauder there. We're just going to take 2. We're going to use this Campfire. This thing is putting in absolute work. Amazing, amazing card. Opponent plays another Breathless Knight. We hit a land. We're just going to play a land and play our Fangren Marauder with a bunch of life gain available to us. Opponent has a Fleshbag Marauder, which is brutal, but it's the reason we held the Fangren Marauder last turn. We really did not want to run into a removal spell and not be able to do this. So we sacrifice 1 Lembas. We sacrifice 2 Lembasses. We're going to gain 16 life. And then sacrifice the Fangren Marauder, which is sad. Opponent just sacrifices a cat token. He's going to attack us for 5. That's fine. We'll go to 21. Really looking for a board wipe or removal spear. Crypt Rats would be great here. You know, Drown in Sorrow, any of those would be great here. We're just going to gain 2 life, offset a little bit of this damage. We're going to crack a Lembas to gain some more life. Now, the idea behind this crack is to fill our deck with as many Lembasses as possible. To make sure that as many draws as possible draw us more cards. That way we just increase our odds of drawing an action spell that even if it's not the spell we want, it's a cantrip and all of the Lembas scry 1, so it allows us some card selection. Still have the Moment's Peace as a backup plan in the graveyard, but really hoping to hit a Drown in Sorrow or a Crypt Rats here and then be able to Bojuka Bog because they don't know about this one. And I feel like if we can Bojuka Bog the opponent's board and graveyard, they've only got 2 cards left in hand, we're probably going to win the game on the spot. So that's the plan. We hit the Drown in Sorrow because we're absolutely incredible. Never didn't have it. Opponent actually goes for a Benevolent Blessing here to try to save 1, but unfortunately protection does not stop. -2, -2. And we're going to go ahead and put this Swamp on the top of the library back to the bottom of the library. And we're going to Bojuka Bog the opponent, and the opponent scoops it up. Great showing from this deck. That wraps up match number 2, though. So an absolute haymaker of a deck. It feels so good to play into this meta right now. I tested it several other games, but those were some really strong showings to give you guys an idea of how this deck can perform and what it looks like. Fantastic deck. Had a ton of fun playing it. I hope that you guys enjoy it. If you guys give this a try, post your records down in the comments or post your trophy screenshots over in my Discord. There is a link to join down below to join the Pauper community. Thank you so much for watching and spending your Saturday afternoon with me as usual, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video if you made it all the way to the end. And as usual, goodbye forever unless I see you next time.